film, which used to run 7 hours, now only runs 4 hours and 40 minutes.
Short version.
Short version. Over the years, it's been tinkered with and taken out and put back, and it's like a Frankenfilm. Somebody called it a Frankenfilm. In the late '60s, there was a movement called camp, and it involved looking at older films and seeing them as basically sincere but absurd. And there was a 1943 Batman serial that was re-released in the 1960s. And instead of being one episode at a time, which is the way they were shown in the theaters, they ran all 15 chapters in one sitting. So the audience could see the end of chapter 2, the train comes and runs over Batman, and then at the beginning of chapter 3, after they've supposedly forgotten what they saw the week before, we see that there's an extra shot that they left out where Batman rolls away and the train doesn't hit him. It was an interesting lesson for us kids to see how we were fooled when we were little. And also the concept of sitting for that long, watching something silly, there's something that it does to your head. And you get a little dizzy and a little goofy. So the longer it is, the crazier it is. Now this film is an attempt to make a pop culture collage out of things that you would probably see if you were changing channels on late night television. It was started in 1966. I kept working on it until the mid-'70s. And what we would do is we would run this at college campuses. And the Schlitz Beer Company would pass out free beer. And the students would drink the beer, and they'd watch the show, and then they'd pass out. And there was a lot of strange-smelling smoke in the auditorium, which apparently helped the movie go down. This is like a mashup, like you would see on YouTube, but it's so much cruder than you would see because it's all literally spliced together. It's film pieces spliced together with no mixing, no color correcting. The ad for it, we said it was a 2001 Splice Odyssey. And now I'm thinking there's probably a lot of people who don't know what a splice is anymore. But it's the film is all scratched, and it comes from, there are many different prints all put together. This is now on digital because the prints started falling apart because we ran it so many times. It's very anti-military. It's very anti-establishment. It's in terrible taste on occasion.
Very good.
And sometimes, mainly it's a juxtaposition of one thing against another, and how it's a sort of exercise in editorial something. And it's also been called the key to my work. So many things that I have subsequently used in movies of mine have originated with this, even in ways that I wasn't aware of. That it actually has become sort of the Rosetta Stone, where people say, oh, well, if you want to understand Dante, you got to see the movie Orgy. Now, that does not mean that you have to sit through the entire movie. It was designed to be walked out on. The idea was that if the movie gets bored, if you get bored with something in the movie, sooner or later it'll change and there'll be something else. But if you want to go out and get a Coke, you want to go out and have a smoke, you come back, you haven't missed anything. That's fine. There are simultaneously several different movies running, different stories. We used to have them on separate reels, and then finally we bought them and cut them all together. That are interwoven in the story. So there is a story to tell you, but there's also a lot of other nonsense that's in between the story. And a lot of it is images that you will be completely unfamiliar with. They're all American pop culture images, some of which had been forgotten even by the audience that we showed the movie to in the 60s. Because you got to remember, if you saw something when you were a kid on TV, you never saw it again. And sometimes we were bringing things back, like The Lone Ranger, for instance, to people who hadn't seen this stuff until they were little, and since they were little, and it would make them very nostalgic. The other thing is there are many topical references in the movie that no longer are funny. There's a scene where Tonto says to the Lone Ranger that they should make camp here because there's good grass nearby. Well, of course, everybody laughed because grass, that's what we're smoking. And now, of course, nobody notices that. This was very soon after the riots in Chicago, at the Chicago Convention in 1968, where people were hit and gassed and people were radicalized, including me. And so there's a line in the movie where a character says, "You can't drop an atom bomb on Chicago." And that used to bring down the house. They used to all just, yes, go ahead, you know. So you can't really enjoy it in that spirit anymore because it's an artifact of a world that you don't live in. But it is apparently we have run it with some success at various film festivals, if not a little confusion and some consternation on the parts of audiences like, what is this? But again, I hope you can get into the spirit of it, and if you don't feel bad because it's only a movie. And I'll apparently be back, I'm told, to take the heat for this after it's over, if there's anybody left. So.